Michael Wiese is like a living timeline of cultural history that spans from the mid-20th century until today. In his early years, Michael played drums for a precursor to the legendary rock band Jefferson Airplane. Later, he dated trumpeter Herb Alpert's niece. An early film of Michael's was premiered by Salvador Dali. Michael was a player in the earliest days of the human potential movement, of home video, and of desktop publishing. He produced Shirley MacLaine's first meditation video. He worked with Buckminster Fuller. Michael Wiese wrote the earliest books for filmmakers, created the first publishing company dedicated to film and filmmaking, and is an accomplished filmmaker in his own right. And the list goes on and on. But we'll stop with the accomplishment that has brought Michael Wiese to us today as the author of a new and powerfully inspiring visionary memoir, Onward and Upward, Reflections of a Joyful Life. Welcome, Michael. One of the first things I wanted to ask you was about the Shirley MacLaine experience, mostly not because of Shirley MacLaine, the celebrity, but because you talked in the book about how pivotal an experience it was for you. It was like a demarcation point between who you were, or who you had been, and who you then became. So maybe you can talk a bit about that experience and what was the turning point for you?
Well, it surely was one of many turning points, but I think what you're referring to is I had just been, I'd been an independent filmmaker in San Francisco making human potential films, spiritually oriented films, and then I got involved in the entertainment industry. And for many years, when video was just in its go-go stages and everything was exploding. And that was very exciting, but it took me away from earlier explorations and studying that I'd done. And so I had an opportunity to work with Shirley, and we did a film about chakra meditation. And that kind of refocused me. I was out of a job, and I was freelancing again. And I stayed out of a job until now, so I'm still out of a job. But you know, it was a reawakening after a decade of kind of getting caught up with you know, the excitement of producing a lot of entertainment-oriented stuff and working with comedians, you know, Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg, and all of that, and music groups, and you know, it takes me away from inner work. It was all outside. It was all New York, L.A. Exciting stuff. It was, you know, most people would probably give their eye teeth to have done that, but it's in the long run, it's empty, or it was empty for me. I mean, I gained a great deal of experience in terms of what I used then in my own company, in terms of how to produce, how to market, how to distribute independent works, mostly books. So there was a value of being inside the industry where things were, you know, where I learned a lot, but it wasn't soul satisfying. Mm-hmm. And Shirley came along with the project at a good time, and it was great working with her, and what can I say?
although she was, from what you wrote in the book, difficult, yes.
demanding.
Well, I guess she knew what she wanted, or thought she knew what she wanted, and made no bones about stating that.
Well, she is a perfectionist, and she does have, you know, Tonys and Oscars, and she gets them for something. So
sure,
there's a method to her, the way she works.
And the stories you tell about that, I won't ruin it for readers, are very entertaining about that experience. So
meditation tape, but I had probably the worst migraine in my life as a result of working on it. You know.
So it all. Go ahead.
Just say no more.
We'll leave it. It's in the book. That's right. Well, it's almost as though that pivot point was the beginning of what got you to where you are, which is in rural England, in Penzance.
Well, I was looking at the book again today, and everything kind of got me here and beyond. You know, mm-hmm. There are, as I think in everybody's life, there are indications, there are signs along the way, there are little moments that turn you make a decision, you pick an option, you go in one direction or another, based on, you know, in micro moments sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there were many micro moments along there, and I just sort of, I think my wife sort of calls me the Zelig of entertainment or something, because I sort of showed up or Bucky showed up at the right time, and Shirley showed up at the right time, and all these wonderful people, you know, well-known and not well-known. I mean, I tell stories about people who nobody's ever heard of that had more profound influence on me, like Greg White, the typist, mm-hmm. You know, a friend of mine. So it's, I'm not making it. This isn't a book about stars, although there are a lot of well-known people in it. And this shaking that you see, by the way, we should let people know it's not my webcam. It's my Parkinson's acting up, which is part of the story.
Right. No, for sure. I want to talk about the Parkinson's. I was going to talk about it later, but now that you brought it up, you talk about it toward the end of the book because that's where in your life it kicked in, as a friend. And I really want to explore that with you because I think that's just a wonderful approach to what for many people would be very different.
Well, it's a friend, and it's made me slow down and get very conscious about everything I do, because even getting ready for you today, I didn't leave enough time to put on a shirt, and it takes a while to button a shirt. So I mostly wear T-shirts, so I was going to wear a nice shirt for you today. And so it brings you to a mindfulness, I guess, a relationship with the world that's much slower and much, physically challenged. And you can get frustrated about that, which I do sometimes, or you can just appreciate that you're in a lower gear, which allows you to see a whole lot more. You see into the. When I go for a walk in the garden, I'm not moving quite so quickly. I'm moving slowly, and I'm seeing not only the plants, but the leaves on the plant, and the flowers on the plant, and the insects in the plant, and what they're up to. And I never saw that kind of thing before Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm. How has it progressed? Is it pretty much the same? Or is it up and down?
Well, it's like a constellation of clouds, and different clouds, which are symptoms, appear and disappear. Like I can, for the first time in 2 years, a couple of days ago, I can dry my back like Fritz the cat, And that was a motion I couldn't make. Subtle motor motions I couldn't make. And other things are more difficult. So my balance is a little bit wobbly this last couple of weeks. So, you deal with it. It comes, it goes. It's the body.
Sure.
Life in the body.
Well, it's interesting again because certainly one of the through lines in the book is consciousness, is mindfulness, and so it's interesting that that's the kind of trajectory in the book and in a sense in your life, bringing you to a place of as mindful as you perhaps had been at points in your life to really a very focused mindfulness now.
Yeah, well, a lot of that has to do with my experience in the Amazon, looking for a cure for Parkinson's. And I tried stem cell therapy in Dusseldorf, really high-tech stuff. And I've tried shamanic stuff too, like ayahuasca in Peru. And that not only dealt with the Parkinson's, but dealt with my whole worldview and dumped it on its head and showed me that my beliefs were completely out of line with reality. And it showed me new realities, which I've since gone on to explore in film. So, Parkinson's brought me to ayahuasca, which brought me to a greater understanding of the world and many, many dimensions. And that's the extraordinary chapter in the last in my life, really.
Can you talk a bit more about what was turned on its head in that experience? Who you were, or what you thought and believed before that, as opposed to where you are now.
Well, I think it's what a lot of us believe, that we're separate little beings against the world, and the world's against us, and we got to fight to survive. And if you don't get yours now, you won't ever get it. It's like me first as a separate entity. And ayahuasca shows that we're part of this entire vast web of relationships. We don't exist without the air and the water and the plants. This seems like common knowledge, but on an experiential level, it's quite different. You realize you are everything, and everything is you. But it's not an intellectual thing. And so from there, and you also realize that one of the first things ayahuasca teaches you is that plants have consciousness, which is an extraordinary insight, because I thought only humans had consciousness. Okay, maybe dolphins, maybe dogs and cats, okay, monkeys, okay, the great apes, but let's not go beyond that. But plants have consciousness. So these plants actually are called teacher plants because they teach you. Now, had somebody told me this 10 years ago, I would have said, right, I got to go now, I've got an appointment. See you later. But as probably many people listening to this are doing, or the people are saying, what does he really mean by that? And you enter into a relationship, a dialogue with a plant, And plants have been around billions of years. You know, we come from plants, so they know. They have an agenda, and the agenda is actually to inform us and hopefully get us out of this stilted relationship we have with ecology into something more more reality-based, so that for survival. And it seems curious that the plants, Mother Earth itself, is bringing us this message. I think it's just so ironic, you know. But many, many things ayahuasca has. It's a well-known healing medicine. It's called medicine. It's called many things, but and it works on a psychological level, and an emotional level, and an intellectual level, and it speaks to people in their own modality. So for me, I'm very visual, being a filmmaker, and she takes me to a lot of architecture. So I see palaces of healing and diamond-crusted cities and, you know, vast landscapes of futuristic worlds. And other people see other things where they don't see anything at all. They have an acoustical experience or a kinetic experience, you know. You can see people who pass over and talk with them and relate with them. And you also realize there's more dimensions than just this one dimension we're in now. I'm looking out at my garden as I'm doing this interview. And that's only one frequency. If we think of ourselves as a receiver, that's only one frequency. And through meditation or through ayahuasca or through other things, you can change your tuning and see other realities that exist in the same time space as this. And it's extraordinarily exciting because, you know, not only does that mean we're much bigger than we ever thought we were, but the universe is much bigger and we can participate in a much bigger universe. And rather than be scary, which it's very scary and awe-inspiring because it's so big, it's also very, you know, exciting time in my life. I thought when I hit my 60s, I'd have my feet up on the couch and watching reruns of television, you know. Instead, I'm exploring all these new trains of thought and exploration, and it's very exciting. And so Parkinsons brought me to ayahuasca, which brought me to that. And I don't know. And the book is a celebration of looking at all those links, those little mindful connections. And it's really, yeah, it's about my life and it's about the material of my life, but people that have read the book relate to it in their own life, in their own journey, and it tended to inspire them to turn up the amperage on their quest, return them to their quest, and go, yeah, I was, you know, I don't know if it did that for you, but it's been reported that.
No, I mean it was powerfully inspiring for sure, and I mean our lives have been very different, but I think one of the reasons why I was interested in chatting with you is because I think the spiritual thread has been similar, even if the ways it has played out has not been. What was your motivation for writing a memoir, for putting all that down?
Well, I think a lot of things. I wanted to simply celebrate the joy that I had in my life, and thank and acknowledge the friends and lovers and teachers and people that have contributed to this spirit's journey through space and time. And my daughter's 20, and I wanted to leave a legacy for her and tell her the stories that my parents weren't able to tell or didn't tell or forgot to tell or wish they would have told, or, you know, so that she sees in one's crazy trajectory, it's not so crazy after all. There is a sense that, you know, your life does make sense. And I think your life makes sense is all you have to do is like live your life however it turns out. And that's your contribution to consciousness. So you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be famous, you don't have to win an Oscar or an Olympic gold medal. You can. You know, you don't have to open a grocery store, you don't have to flunk out of college. Any of those things count. And as evidenced by friends that I've known that haven't, quote, accomplished much in their life in terms of what the culture acknowledges, but at the end of things said, well, it turned out all right, or said, oh my God, I don't believe it, you know, it was their last words. And ayahuasca, I think, shows you that too. It's just live your life and enjoy it. You can't mess it up, whatever you do. So anyway, I took a tangent somewhere. And
No, that's great.
Why did I write it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a lot of reasons. Well, also my typing was starting to go, and being a fast typist, I wanted to get it down before I was typing too slow to still enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Are you, were you, I have a hard time dictating when I'm writing. I much prefer the finger on the keyboard. Can you dictate, or are you finding ways to do that now, or are you still?
I tried a dictation program and it was rubbish, and I don't think like that. I just think and type. I mean, it just comes out. The dictation, you got to tell it to back up, or oh no, scratch that, or
right.
And how you revise with it. How do you? Because I go through many rewrites. It comes out pretty clunky the first time, second time, third time. It needs refinement. I also think I enjoy telling these stories. There are lots and lots of little stories with some are only a paragraph long, and some are very funny, some are very poignant. I think they surprise people. People that know me are very surprised by the book. They know me at different times, different Michaels. There are 1,000 different Michaels in the book.
Different compartments, right?
Yeah, different. And so people are very surprised by all aspects of it.
So it's almost like an act of integration, isn't it? It's bringing all those different compartments, all those different pieces of you into one place.
Yeah, and and saying that's exactly right, and saying and I'm all right with that. So I bring in some very embarrassing moments and stuff I got thrown out of school for, and all kinds of stuff that one would keep a secret, but there's a good story in it, and I couldn't resist telling the good stories in it. And so it is a way of integrating and saying, it's all okay.
Were there stories that were particularly difficult for you to include?
Yeah, I think the stories about my brother dying, my father dying, I mean, it would be difficult for anybody, or a relationship breaking up, or the end of a job. I mean, the end of anything, change. Mm-hmm. Any sort of dramatic change was hard to deal with at the time and hard to deal with in the recalling of it. But they say that it doesn't hurt. If you're not trying to, it doesn't hurt. It's not the truth and not worth writing about. So it's a good indication.
Did in writing about some of these perhaps more challenging moments in your life, did the memoir give you fresh perspective or fresh insight, either into the experience or into yourself or into that moment in the past or into a moment today?
Yeah, I think that the unconscious plays a large part in creativity of all kinds, and so they're symbols or they're moments or they're stories, or they're initiations that I didn't realize were initiations at the time because I was too young. I was a child and things happened, or there was iconic things going on in the culture that influenced me more than I thought they did at the time. Or being in San Francisco in the 60s, had a greater impact on me than I thought, as it did on many of us. I mean, this is kind of the story of our generation in many ways. And those values of the 60s, how do you hang on to them? Or is it appropriate to hang on to them? Or do you let them go? Or how do you integrate them? What do you take with you? And what do you choose to live? How do you choose to live your life? And what do you decide to discard? So I'm still probably learning stuff from it. I mean, I discover stuff all the time in my films. After 100 viewings, I see something and go, wow, that's great, that I never consciously put there. But
I mean, to me, that's one of the interesting and actually joyful and fun things about being a creative artist is continuing to discover things in the same that are in the same story. For example, that I didn't see there the first time, but that somebody else sees and I never saw, because it is the unconscious at work. Even in a memoir where you're in effect telling stories you think you already know, but are discovering things about them in the telling of them or in the aftermath that you didn't actually consciously know.
Well, and you keep the stories, you keep telling them for a reason, and there's a lot of things you don't tell. We tell 1% of 1% of 1% of what happens to us in our lives, and how do we choose that? I mean, already it's not the truth,
of course,
because it's brought into words, and then it's refined to be a good story. But like I realized, I tell a story about being a kid and reading the back of a cereal box and wanting to order this treasure-finding Geiger counter that is guaranteed to find you gold and coins on the beach. And I get it, and of course the thing is rubbish. And that puts an end to that. One would think, but my whole life has been a treasure hunt, looking for the treasure, esoteric and otherwise. And so that's a little, if you catch it in the book, and if you opens you up to, okay, there's a treasure hunter here, or not. It's a nice little story, but and there are things that reverberate on that level, because then there's a story about finding a diamond ring, and then the diamond ring leads to here. Anyway, there are a lot of links with these little, they're little mythic. Some are very mythic. They could be about anytime, anybody, any place. Could they? I mean, they could be. They're peculiar to me, but they're also play out in other people's lives. These little.
Oh, for sure, because there's either a deeper consciousness or a larger kind of mythological thread going on that we can all connect with, which is why the stories touch people, because they're not just about you, even though they are just about you.
Yeah, it's kind of, I didn't want it to be just about me. There were times when I was doing it, I said, who's going to want to care? No, I know a lot of people with a lot more interesting lives than I've had. Lots. And I said, well, why should I tell this? Well, maybe somebody could learn something from it. Maybe younger people could learn something from it. And I can tell it in an engaging way, or maybe it'll help some people complete what they're doing, or, come to a new understanding of where they are at a particular time in their life. I mean, I'm 66 now. I'm an elder. It counts for something.
Damn right. So,
and I feel responsible in a way, right? That I've got the skills to do it. I've got the stories to tell, and I've got a publishing machine that will put the book out. So if I don't go for it, woe is me.
When you began, did you have a sense of a through line of an overarching theme, or did you just begin and kind of the story told itself to you?
I began collecting stories, and then my wife would read them, and the ones she laughed at and liked the most stayed, and the ones she said, this one doesn't feel like it fits, and then we discovered it was about joy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And once the theme was discovered, then I had something I could match. I could look at the material and see if it fit.
Right.
And then I ordered things. I mean, some things didn't fit. There were sidebars, and it just had to be dropped. There was too much material. And then each book or film has its own form. After a while, you're serving it. You get it started, and it takes over, and it tells you what to do. And so the book sort of did that at a certain point too.
I certainly. I mean, I have a memoir too, and I had pretty much the same experience. Not knowing, first, I felt very called to do it and didn't want to do it, but did it anyhow, and didn't know what kind of the theme was until I began writing, and suddenly a theme in my life that I guess I was only semi-conscious of leapt out at me, and that then became the theme of the book, and everything kind of lined up with that. So very similar. Were there stories, any particular stories that you were sorry to have to leave out?
I don't think so. I would have put them in. I mean, nothing comes to mind, really. Although occasionally I think of something that I forgot to tell, a little twist of a paragraph here and there that I'd say, I wish I would have remembered to do that. But, that'll haunt me forever. So there's enough good stuff in there.
There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's in fact, I will hold up the book so people can actually see it. Tell me about the cover photo.
The cover photo is not me.
Uh-huh.
But I liked his attitude in his scratchy, woolly suit with his daredevil, risk it all attitude. And this was actually a cover that I had for somebody else's book. Mm-hmm. We published books about filmmaking, and he didn't like it. And I said, "You don't like it? I think it's great. I'll use it on my book." So now he's probably sorry. But we put the flames in.
Uh-huh.
Little Photoshop job.
Right. It's a great.
And I like the back. I like the back too. He's flying.
Right.
Flying.
No, I think it's a great cover, and it really speaks to.
It's the fearless attitude. It's the when you're young, and I was young for a long time. You think nothing can happen to you, and you're willing to take all kinds of risks, and that's what I wanted to convey with the cover. Mm-hmm. It's just joyful fearlessness. Somehow we pick up fear along the way and forget that the whole thing's about love, and we start accepting more fear in our life than love, and that's where it goes off the tracks.
Then we spend the rest of our lives trying to get it back again.
Yeah.
I mean, the cover is great, and it really, really, I mean, I assumed it was you because it was just spoke so much of the child Michael you write about in the book. So
I don't know if they had color photography then.
No, probably not. But you could have photoshopped that part. The other thing that I found really compelling, and this is a craft thing more than a content thing, is you pretty much wrote the whole thing in the present tense, and that gave it such an immediacy as I was reading it. It really had me there in every moment of your life with you. I think in a way that kind of recalling it wouldn't have quite as powerfully.
Yeah, that was very conscious, as was trying to write using language that a person of that age would use. So it's very childlike in the beginning, and especially ages 5 to 10 or teenage years have another voice, and I mean it sort of blurs where it changes, and then the latter part has more of an elder's voice, I would hope. But my senses are very. I always question whether my writing is any good because the sentences are so short and simple. I don't know how to write long sentences, So I have to keep it in with little images and little, almost haiku.
Right.
Not get too complicated with it.
Well, I think, as a reader, both the style and the voice worked really well. I mean, I was with you the whole way, and it was a great and inspiring read, and I repeat that not only for you to hear, but for those who are watching and listening to hear it too, because I really think that anybody who has an ounce of consciousness, or even not, will find something really compelling about your story and uplifting. Which again is the other nice thing about the cover, because here you are taking off, and you have been uplifted. There you are,
No. We never mentioned the title of the book, which is Onward and Upward.
Right.
Reflections of a Joyful Life. I think it's The Voice of the Muse, which is a wonderful poster behind you. That's your book?
That's one of my books, yeah. The publishing company happened, if I remember correctly from the book, because you had a rejection, or 12.
I started doing film in San Francisco. I was making independent films, and doing pretty well, raising money, getting them produced, getting them distributed, making some money off them. That I wanted to share how to do that, because there were a big filmmaking community and everybody was sort of stumbling along. And so I started doing these seminars, and the seminars had handouts, and the handouts became the first book. And I tried to get it published, and nobody would publish it. And I did send it to 12 or more companies. And so I self-published it and sold 50,000 copies over its lifetime. And that really started the publishing company. I wrote the first 4 books, and then I wrote another 2 or 3 books, and then realized I couldn't do this all myself. I'd have to get other authors to write books, and now we've got over 200 books. But I've always published to what I looked at, what's missing? And so I think of myself as a student filmmaker or a student of consciousness, and I think, what am I interested in? Because in thinking that, expanding on that, thinking other people will be interested in it too, and that's been the secret of the success of the publishing companies is, publish what turns you on and you want to read yourself and learn about.
You talked in the book about filmmaking. And actually, this wasn't the book. It was an interview that I read with you. That filmmaking was easy. It was an act of co-creation. You sort of touched a bit about in that when you're talking about writing the book, but talk about this creativity or filmmaking as an act of co-creation, because it's really something that is very much part of my world, and I talk about it in that book as well.
Well, I can give an example of it, I think, of what I've discovered, which is that in making a film I made in Bali about trans-channeling and the spirit world, you approach these things first with great reverence. It's a very, the co-creative process is a very delicate one, and the first thing you have to do is just bow down and realize that, you know, you're just a part of it, and a small part of it. And hopefully inspiration will come, and forces, creative forces will come to go through you and the people you're working with, and something great, magnificent will happen. And you try to create a feeling of gratitude about that, and that you're in service to something greater than yourself. And so in Bali, the first thing we didn't take out the cameras and start running around the island shooting people. We went to a high priest and had our cameras and ourselves blessed, and let the island know, and the spirits of the island know, who we were, why we were there, what we were trying to do, how they could help us, and when we were going to leave. How long would we be a burden on them? And we did that. And after the filming, we thanked them and told them we're leaving now, you know. And I think that says a lot as far as how you approach your subject, you know. And my wife is a photographer, and she taught me that you don't take a picture, you give a picture. Mm. So when she makes her photographs, she gives them their beauty back. You know, she shows them something that she loves about them in the work, and they respond. She works with Polaroid sometimes, and so if they see the Polaroid, and they go, "Oh, I see what you're doing," and they give her even more. Mm-hmm. So it's a circular thing, and more is given. And so in Bali, when we approached it that way, the doors flung open to us, and we saw some great spiritual masters at work, and they got that we got who who they were, and opened up to us. An extraordinary thing happened. That film's called Talking with Spirits. And I've been to Bali over 20 times over the last 40 years, and developed relationships, but nothing like the last couple times I've been there, because my attitude has changed. The other thing, I was filming an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru, and ayahuasca was my co-creator. And I had the camera, and she'd say, during the ceremony, she said, "Okay, you should shoot that." I'd go film that, some moment. "You don't have to film that. No, you don't have to film that. You can film that now. That would be good." And I would do it. And she was right. So it really cut down on the editing. Yeah, I didn't shoot a bunch of stuff I didn't need. And that was the most direct experience I've had in a, you know, co-creating with a plant. Mm-hmm. Co-directed by the plant ayahuasca.
Did it get a credit?
Actually, it didn't. But it's in the main title. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fascinating again, because when I write, because that's the medium I'm mostly working with. When I write, it's, to me, I'm communing with a story itself, and it's like you with the plant. I'm doing what the story tells me to do. The scene goes here. The scene doesn't go there. And
it's alive.
It is alive. It's very much alive.
Yeah.
Sometimes, some days, too much alive, in terms of what it'll have me do. I mean, one of the things that I say in my workshops a lot is that the story is smarter than I am, and I just sit back and surrender to its wisdom, because it knows what it's about more than I do. And I think, you know, kind of what you're saying is something similar.
Indeed, yeah, exactly. But there's a part of us that is connected and is all wise and all knowing and is all everything. And if we can get there, then it flows very easily, and it's very clear what one needs to do. And you're not staring at a blank page. You're typing or writing or shooting as fast as you can.